Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLamey, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLamey, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. ArchiCAD is the official BIM software of the EntreArchitect community. ArchiCAD BIM software enables design, collaboration, visualization, and project delivery no matter the project size or complexity. With flexible licensing options and a dedicated support team to guide us along the way, ArchiCAD is an ideal choice for firms and projects of any size. I encourage you to reach out and talk to the folks at Graphisoft by visiting our own dedicated webpage at graphisoft.com/us/EntreArchitect. There's even an exclusive special offer waiting for our EntreArchitect community. Go now to graphisoft.com/us/EntreArchitect and see how Graphisoft is positioned to help make your architecture firm a success. That's graphisoft.com/us/ www.entrearchitect. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entre Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Tom Wynn, welcome to Entre Architect Podcast.
Why, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. Tom is a residential architect. His residential architecture journey began in 1994 with an internship at RWA Architects in Cincinnati. And that would take him to Chicago to work under Thomas Beeby, learning classical and traditional principles and details. And then subsequently, Stuart, Cohen, and Hacker, where traditional details were fused with a tailored traditional design approach. Following his time with Cohen and Hacker, Tom formed his own practice, at which time he coincidentally met Wade Weissmann, who he's now working with. I spoke with Wade back in May of 2020, episode 323. We talked about how earned trust leads to your best work. It was a great conversation, so I recommend after this episode, you go listen to episode 323. He bumped into Wade Weissmann at that point, and several years later, they came together again. And today, Tom works with Wade as the studio director.
Yes, that's correct. I actually bumped into Wade. I think it was at a residential architect convention in San Diego, and it must have been, well, I think the first time we met was 15 or 16 years ago. And so we had an intermittent, though long-running conversation for several years. We'd meet up every year in a new city. This was a conference, I think it was called the Reinvention, that was put on by Hanley Wood years ago.
I remember Reinvention.
I think they've discontinued that since the pandemic, which is a shame, but it was a really great opportunity for a bunch of residential architects to come together in another city and be able to share each other's work. And I enjoyed that one an awful lot.
I would love to learn, even go back further than that. I'd love to learn more about you specifically, Tom. When did you discover your passion for architecture, and maybe who or what inspired you to become an architect?
Sure. Okay. Well, I guess everybody probably has a story that they can think about or look back on that goes, pretty deep into childhood. And I think that maybe the first inkling or surfacing of an interest in architecture, the creation of spaces, actually goes back to my time living on a small family farm in Xenia, Ohio, or just outside of Xenia, Ohio. And in particular, we had this really cool old barn that was in a barnyard with a silo and a Quonset hut and a corn crib. But we had about 100 cows that we raised on that farm. And so consequently, we also filled the barn with huge piles of hay and hay bales. And I don't know if you've ever played around with hay bales, but they're like big bristly Legos.
Right. Yeah.
And so, when the middle of winter came about and we started, the cows started to eat down the hay bales, there was a lot more room in the barn to start playing with those large scale Lego blocks. And so I made forts and tunnels and trapdoors and it's a wonder that I actually made it out of childhood. I think I created a small pit that my grandfather landed in unexpectedly one afternoon, and boy, did I catch heck for it. But I really did enjoy sort of working at almost life size, in the barn, creating those forts. But it wasn't really until several years later, 5-6 years later, when my mother remarried. She married my stepfather, and they decided to build a house. And I think that was the summer between my 8th and 9th grade, so between middle school and my first year in high school. And, it was not a custom house. It was definitely one of the more developer-driven things. But, what was really remarkable about it is that it was it was panelized and it was built in about a 3-month period of time. So every single day that summer, something new and interesting and exciting was going on. And, I got to watch the house, go from what was, a half-acre empty field on the edge of the woods to a hole in the ground, to seeing the footprint of the house traced out in concrete, and then just ultimately get pulled up out of the ground, and it became a real, functional operational thing. And it was just fantastic. To this day, the smell of wet cement just kind of gets me going.
Brings you right back.
It sure does. So that, I was about 13, I think, when we built the house, and that really was the sort of quintessential moment in my formative history, and that moment in time when I, quit being a kind of listless and aimless, angsty teenager to somebody who actually had an orientation and an interest in the future that they could work towards. And so that was really huge for me.
Did you know at that point that about architects and architecture, or were you just interested in construction and the process at that point?
Yeah, I did know about architects and architecture. I was also a member. There was a group that was, it was an offshoot of the Boy Scouts. I think it was, they had these explorer posts.
Yeah.
And I think it was shortly after I developed that interest in architecture with the construction of my family's home that I found that an explorer group that actually was fed by a bunch of different high schools in the small Ohio town where we lived. And I actually got to meet several recent graduates from a couple of the local architecture schools. I was in Ohio, so there was a guy who was running this explorer post from, he actually graduated from OSU and was working at one of the larger firms downtown. And he really took an interest in us kids and taking us on field trips and through various architecture firms and just kind of exploring, exposing us to that whole world of architecture. And at one point in time, I think this was right around my senior year in high school, there was a competition that was held for the design of a new fire station that was going to be in one of the adjacent suburbs. And I entered that competition and remarkably won it. Now, they never ended up building the project, but that was a tremendous amount of fun for me to essentially have an experience that was similar to, a studio experience in architecture school before I'd even gotten there. So, I had an opportunity to practice my hand a little bit about casting a vision on a site and generating a design that was, functional and practical and beautiful and all of those things that good architecture should be.
Yeah, that's such a great story. That highlights the importance of us as architects reaching out to the younger generation, right? Even before they recognize that they might want to become an architect, right? That just expose them to the profession so they recognize and understand what architects really do. It's that's a great story.
Yeah, and there's sure a long list of things that we do on a day-to-day basis in our profession. I mean, as well as any how many hats we have to wear over the course of a given project. It's really pretty remarkable. I sometimes joke with our residential clients that I've also got a minor in counseling, marital counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with residential projects for sure.
Yeah.
So I shared a little bit about your professional journey. Talk a little bit about how and when you met Wade the second time, and decided to join the firm, and what's that story?
Yeah, so I was actually living and working in Chicago at the time for an architecture firm that did both architecture and interior design, and I actually have an interest in that finer level of detail that comes with not just the interior architecture, but the materials and the finishes. And so that was a really positive experience for me. But it kind of gotten to a point living in Chicago where I would say honestly, it's an amazing city with an incredible, intense, and rich architectural fabric and history. But after living there for 17 years, I was really yearning for a simpler life experience. In Chicago, you can get anywhere you want, but it's going to take some time. And 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, you never really know based on whether there's a Cubs game or a Bears game. And it's, kind of a stressful experience. And, ultimately I was looking to try and de-escalate the stress that I had, but still continue doing the same qualitative work that I was doing at, a national level. And I had a friend who had left and come to Wade's office a little bit prior. And so, he kept reaching out to me, texting me, like, are you sure you don't want to move up here? And I was like, no, wrong way. I wanted to head west. But ultimately, the conversation did end up moving in a direction that had me at least go up for an interview and to see the office. And, it's a really remarkable office. I think you can see images of it on our website. It's a beautiful environment to work in. And, honestly, it's the best group of people I think I've ever had an opportunity to work with either. A lot of people talk about how the other individuals in their office or the office is large as like a family. And I think I feel that more acutely here than I ever have before. And Milwaukee's, it's a 90-minute drive down to Chicago. So my friends are still down there, and it's easy to get down to see them. But, the quality of life is really quite phenomenal here. And so for me, it's really optimized a lot of personal needs with my professional pursuits in a really good way.
What's your role today with Wade?
So I am the studio director here, and I am on the management team with Wade and our controller, our business strategist, and one other senior architect. And, my personal day-to-day is largely working with our project managers on an individual basis on all of the projects that they are working on. We have a staff of a little over 30 right now, including administrative staff. And we have, I'd have to do a head count to give you the specific numbers, but roughly 8 or 10 project managers. And those 8 to 10 project managers are managing roughly 20 to 25 active projects at any given time. I think we put out just under 70 invoices in a month. So some of those projects are lesser active, either in early stages of design or in, construction administration, where the level of the team's commitment or effort is moderated. So I ultimately work with the individual project managers. We pair the project manager with each project at the outset of the project, even if Wade or another individual in the office is maybe taking the first pass at casting the initial design vision. They're still involved with the project, helping to coordinate meetings and facilitate communication with the clients. But ultimately, their involvement, if they in any particular instance, even if they aren't given the white sheet opportunity, and some of our project managers have been asking for that, and we're trying to facilitate white sheet opportunities for the individual project managers, but they will be with the project from its inception all the way through its completion. And generally speaking, I am also there essentially from the first phone call. So I do a lot of business development and writing the proposals and contracts to bring the work in. But then, because I've been a part of the conversation from the outset, I'm able to provide a great deal of continuity in terms of the project management. Sometimes somebody, one of your project managers decides to start a family, or they get sick, or they need to have an operation, and obviously we have a business to run, and we have specific goals in terms of completing our work and getting projects submitted for permit or out for construction. And so we need to make sure that happens. So I provide sort of a parallel and almost redundant level of oversight and continuity to support the project managers. It's unfortunate. Sometimes a project manager decides to take another position and move on, but I'm still there to be able to transition a new team member into that place.
A firm with 30 people at Entre Architect, we call you the not so small firms.
Yes. Yeah. We're a large, small firm.
Yeah. You're still a small firm, but you're you're not so small firm.
Yes. We have a lot of the structural complexities of a large firm without, having 300 people on payroll.
Right. Yeah. And you talked earlier about you didn't use this word about the culture of the firm, but you talked about it in terms of a family and a great place to work, that's a big piece of what drew you there. I'm assuming what draws other people there. A firm of 30 people, relatively large company, with all types
large for residential practice.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I'm just saying the number of people that a culture like that has to be very intentional and planned and thought about. Right.
That's true.
Something like that doesn't just happen when you have 30 people. Somebody had to have either innately cultivated the culture or specifically planned on the culture.
Well, we do spend a lot of time planning it. We have one woman who is essentially a staffing coordinator. She's also a really phenomenal young architect in her own right. But she helps with coordinating the contracts and projects start times and how we maneuver our staff from one project to the next, because, obviously at any given stage in a project's development, the need for staff will go up as you move into documents and then start to taper off again. And so, we do have a team of junior architects that are essentially floating free radicals that move in between project managers and project teams. We do spend, a significant amount of time, several hours a week, just trying to figure out how to maneuver projects and teams throughout the office. So yes, it does require a great deal of intentional planning.
I'm assuming there's also lots of experience levels, people coming in at a lower level, people at a higher level. Is there an intentional mentoring process that your firm goes through?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's still an evolving thing, but yes. So, outside of a few exceptions, when it comes to hiring, we've had, for one reason or another, a little bit of a challenge getting more experienced staff to join us here in Milwaukee. That's not that they don't exist, but a culture of high-end residential architecture outside of the four walls of this office doesn't really exist here. And so we have a hard time finding experienced architects with an interest and background in residential architecture here. They exist in other adjacent cities, but trying to get them to relocate has been a little bit of a challenge. So one of the things that we have found is that it's generally been easier for us to recruit recent graduates. And we do have a pretty strong relationship with the University of Notre Dame. And they just so happen to have a program or a curriculum that's dedicated to classical and traditional architecture. And so it's helpful to have familiarity with, the kit of parts and the compositional principles that are taught in a classically oriented school like that. When you're working on houses that do tend to fall into that, traditional and classical paradigm. And so we usually pick up a couple, at least one, if not two, recent graduates almost every year. And we have a buddy system. So we'll pair them with somebody who is also a similarly recent graduate, but had been with the office for 2 or 3 years, so that they have somebody to show them the ropes and help them with the various processes that we have in place. And, when we have had more experienced graduates, we'll pair them with, one of the senior project managers to similarly provide them with, somebody to support their onboarding into the office. Seems like you'd asked a little bit about mentoring. So that's certainly a big interest of mine. I'm less interested in, I'm not so interested in running a fulfillment department where, the individual responsibilities for a given person in our office is, so broken down that, there's, Dave, that guy just does CA, and that person over there just does, interior elevations, and that person just does the technical drawings, and that guy over there is really good at design, so he's just going to be coming up with the pretty pictures. I very firmly believe that for us it's almost a matter of survival to create a staff of project managers and architects who are well-rounded enough to be able to both generate a design concept but also have the technical skills and experience to be able to make that pretty picture a reality. And then, of course, the foresight that it takes to be able to bring a project through construction to completion and see all of the hidden in plain sight conditions that can, for lack of a better term, sort of wreak havoc on a beautiful and otherwise, visually simple interior.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. This episode of Entre Architect Podcast is supported by arcat.com. Can't find the product data that you're looking for? You might be using the wrong search engine. Broad searches result in consumer products, out-of-date information, and websites that hide or don't have the information that you're looking for. If you need specifications, CAD, or BIM, arcat.com is your search engine. Find and download the up-to-date data that you need fast. arcat.com is free and requires no registration. So try Arcat today. That's ARCAT.com. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the Entre Architect community. So how does that process work? I mean, strategically, right, or tactically, in order to develop those staff members to sort of have that well-rounded experience. Is there a specific process that they go through, or is it just the culture that? Go ahead.
It's not something that's specifically codified in terms of a process that we go through. I do spend a lot of time personally investing in the project managers. We spend time, I will do an interim review of a drawing set, and I can just glance at a sheet and I can tell you, the 6 or 8 problems that I see with it immediately. And there are things like, how materials turn the corner, what happens when you transition between floors and what that means in terms of wall thicknesses, whether or not there's room for something as simple as a light switch, whether or not you can get that item into the space after the house is framed. So I talk a lot about, the practical necessities of architecture, and we do a lot of sketching and sketching through details. And I mean, we get into thermal bridging concepts and, high level building science. And it's in this ongoing conversation that I have with all of the project managers. And it's putting together a set of documents in a thoughtful way. It's, a set of drawings it's like in a set of assembly instructions for, a model that you might buy from the store.
Right.
And so it's all about how information is conveyed. And it's about conveying information in a way that is legible and understandable for the general contractor and for the subcontractors. And, I spend a lot of time working with them, getting them to visualize, okay, here I am, I'm I'm a carpenter or I'm an electrician, and you're asking for me to set this light switch in this particular location. Well, there's not a door casing installed on the door yet because it's just rough framing, and I'm not standing on the finished floor. That could be a couple inches higher. I'm actually standing on the subfloor. Well, so what are the things that are going to be in existence at the time that a particular element is fixed to the structure? And so, there's a lot of conversations that we have about buildability and construction sequencing in order to be able to assemble a set of drawings that is both beautiful, but also practically addresses the needs of the contractors in the field. And, this is, I think, in a certain sense, an extension of an orientation that we have here at WWA of being very collaborative with our general contractor base. When something goes wrong on a job site, and invariably it does, and sometimes it's our fault and sometimes it's the contractor's fault, but we have an orientation towards rolling with the punches and having the design process be something that is additive in nature, because there's nothing more heartbreaking for a client who had just been at the job site the day prior to see that a wall had been taken down because of some mistake that had been made. And so at any point in time that we can find a solution that keeps the contractor whole and the project generally on schedule, we're going to, work towards that solution in a very, constructive and collaborative way. And, I think that, like I said, I think that's just an extension of the way that we think about conveying information to the very skilled tradespeople that we work with.
Yeah, I when I spoke with Wade, we talked about that pretty extensively, the relationship that your firm has with contractors. Again, if you're listening and you want to listen to that, it's episode 323, great conversation. When you're talking about the project managers and the work that you do, actually, listeners, you should go to wadeweissmanarchitecture.com and go look at the work that we're talking about here. Very, very finely detailed and beautiful traditional residential architecture, top of the line, best, type of architecture, beautiful homes. And so you're talking about the detail of that kind of stuff, Tom, and how that detail happens, right? And detailing the drawing so the light switch ends up where you want it in the wall at the time. It's not a random location. It happens right where you want it.
Yeah, you don't have to cut the casing around the light switch.
Right, exactly. And so in order to get that, you have to teach that, right? And a lot of that from experience, also being a residential architect, a lot of that comes from experience, right? Making those mistakes and then recognizing that you've made that mistake and you're never going to do it again. And an accumulation of those becomes, you start to know what you're doing. But in order to avoid that, right, you don't want that to happen on your projects. So you have to teach
you let
that
the guy who made a lot of mistakes run the office.
As he raises his hand.
Yeah.
Is there, in addition to sort of the coaching and sort of the reviews and having them be taught, like actually, teaching them, is there sort of a shadow process that they go through that they sort of can see the things you're doing so they learn what they need to learn?
There are, when we have somebody in our office who is roughly in that 5 to 7 year experience range. So they've been on a project, and we, even with our junior staff, if we can keep them on a project, and not just, be the person who just draws the interior elevations, but if we can keep them on the project and have them attend site visits with their project managers and get them exposed to the job site, that really facilitates the learning curve significantly. But when we get the staff who have been with us for long enough, they've been on a few job sites, they've worked with a couple different project managers and gotten some of the different flavors that individual PMs bring to their own processes. And we feel like, they are keyed in on the right information, the right notion about how a project should progress when they're providing insights about issues that they see in the drawing set, and also providing, some potential solutions. They're like, okay, well, that's somebody who is, ready to start, down the path towards becoming a fully fledged project manager. And so we'll try and pick a smaller project. Now, sometimes, the addition renovation projects can be highly complex. So if it's a smaller project like a guest house or a cabin or just a smaller residential structure somewhere in the woods that's relatively straightforward and simple, we will actually pair them with one of our senior project managers, and they will meet with their senior project manager once a week or as needed, right?
Yeah.
And that senior PM will essentially show them the ropes of, well, this is how so I don't know if you're familiar with, there was a Deltec product that we use called Agera that,
Sure.
does our
Yeah.
invoicing and billing and timesheets and that sort of thing. But we also use it for scheduling our projects and for looking at how far out our workflow, is projecting into the future. And so, there's a bit of learning curve, with that software. And so the project managers will essentially work with our junior project managers and show them the ropes, in terms of our internal systems and how those things actually operate. But the senior project manager isn't actually doing the project or running their project. They're just providing the kind of support and oversight that they need, because, myself in the current role that I have, my calendar gets booked out pretty solidly for a couple of weeks, and it's harder for me to do a drive-by, appointment with somebody who might need that extra level of support. So we like to make sure that there's somebody who is, proximally located near them in the office, who is familiar with the project, but isn't specifically responsible for its development. So, again, it's a buddy system of sorts.
Yeah. Who is managing the client experience at your firm? Is that project managers?
So when you say managing the client experience, are you talking about who is the person who handles the day-to-day, information exchange?
The whole process. So, from the point where, once they've signed on to be a client and the design process starts, who's meeting with the client to do that design process, and then who's managing the rest of the project with the client, and how does that handoff happen if it's a different person?
There's a lot of different answers to that, because, we have, much larger, we have, larger, more complicated projects. We have smaller, simpler projects. And depending on the level of sophistication or firepower that, a project needs, the initial concept drawing can be generated by Wade or myself or our director of design, Eric Slavin, or if a project manager has a specific interest in, scratching that itch and generating a schematic design, we'll give them the program, and they'll, start to sketch through, a few ideas, and they'll meet with myself and Wade or myself and Eric, and we'll provide, that kind of desk crit opportunity. So there are a lot of different ways that a project's design vision is realized. So I don't have, a one size fits all answer for you there.
The attorneys often say it depends. That's usually
It depends. And that is true. Yes,
that's
it does
usually the
depend.
answer from the
Yes.
attorneys. So that's very interesting, because that's always a difficult process with the client, right? Because you want to make sure that the client is managed and handled well.
Yes.
And
And so I'll be, I try and be in every client meeting, which doesn't always happen. If I'm not there, usually Wade will be able to be there. Sometimes it's both of us. It's another one of those things that it just kind of depends
yeah,
on, whether the client's particularly high touch or not, and at what stage in the project's development we happen to find ourselves in.
yeah. It's interesting to hear you share sort of the behind the scenes of Wade Weissmann Architects, and understand how these beautiful houses are
It's
designed
a
and built.
finely polished, well-oiled machine. Don't let anybody ever tell you differently.
We're talking to thousands of architects who are primarily small firm architects, and
Hmm.
are striving to figure it all out, right? And so it's
Yes.
great to hear how your firm does the things that they do.
I think it's always good. And I was uh, a sole proprietor for 8 years or so in Chicago. And I remember the first time that I was working on a design for my first house, and I realized there was nobody else to talk to or to ask. And I just had to make a decision. And it almost didn't matter what the decision was, just that a decision be made, and
Right.
that you then kind of play out what the uh, implications are, as time goes on. But I think it's a very frightening prospect for a lot of people when they have a blank sheet of paper in front of them, and you want to put a line down, but you want to make sure it's in the right spot and the right length, and you can get a little bit paralyzed. So it's not so much what the idea is, but that you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice. Um, how about what, and let me ask you that final question that I ask everybody, because that was a very good uh, lead into something like that. What is the one thing that a small firm architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
Self-care, I think. I think that we've all had health challenges in the past, or witnessed people who have. And I think that if you're going to be running a practice, and if you have that kind of entrepreneurial personality, there's always a lot of drive that comes with that. And it's very easy to drive yourself into the ground. And so I think, anybody who is, and I think that that's true too for a lot of the project managers. I mean, these are demanding projects with
Yeah.
demanding schedules and demanding clients. And, the number of hours that it takes to realize a project can be extreme with people. We try not to have people scheduled, more than, say, 42 to 45 hours a week, but, we consistently see people in the mid to upper 50s. And I think that, a big project requires a great deal of stamina. It is a long game. It is something which is which occurs over, a minimum of 3, if not a 5-year period of time. And you have to learn to pace yourself. And so that's kind of why I'm saying I think that self-care is really important, to be able to make sure that, after those 5 years, there's still something left of you that's useful.
Yes, that's very wise advice, especially now, having come out of the pandemic.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are struggling, not only mentally, but also physically, right? That they've,
Hmm.
when you're locked in your house
Hmm.
for 2 years, you don't move around very much.
Yes.
And I'm starting to see people talk about that, uh, the more obvious thing is the wellness and the mental health, right? People are sort of trying to rebuild from. But the physical, wellness is critical as well. Um, that you have to be intentional about getting up and moving and getting out and taking care of yourself. And so that being a priority is a great answer to that question. So thank you for that, and for the reminder. because I think a lot of us who are listening right now are nodding our heads. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah,
Right?
you've got to do it.
We need to make sure we do that before it's too late, because often you can get to a point where some of the things that could happen from that are irreversible, right? That as you get older, right? Literally today is my birthday. I'm 53 years
happy
old
birthday.
today. Thank you.
Okay.
And when you start getting into your 50s, you realize, the things that you did as your 20 and 30-year-old, some of those bad habits that you had that lasted for years are now sort of rising up and becoming issues that are irreversible, right? Those are things that you did because you didn't take care of yourself for 20 years. And so it's a very good reminder for that, for me as well. So thank you. His name is Tom Wynn. The firm name is Wade Weissmann Architecture. You should go check out the website at wadeweissmannarchitecture.com. We will have a link to that on the show notes. Tom, thank you for coming by and sharing about Wade Weissmann Architecture and about your experience and the sort of a little bit of the behind the scenes of how those beautiful houses get designed and built. So I appreciate you coming by here and sharing your knowledge at Entre Architect Podcast.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a rating, write a review, share a link with a friend. That's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands of architects just like you. Please share a rating, write a review, share a link to this episode with a friend. I'd appreciate it. Links to all our sponsors and all the resources we discussed today are available at the show notes for this episode, found at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Entre Architect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. It's the network dedicated to architects, engineers, and construction pros. Listen and subscribe to all the shows at Gable Media at gablemedia.com. That's GABL media.com. Go check it out. We have, I think, 13 podcasts over there now. gablemedia.com. And before we wrap up, a special thank you to our partners at Graphisoft for helping our community of architects make the transition to BIM with ArchiCAD software. Go now to graphisoft.com/us/EntreArchitect and see how Graphisoft is positioning to help make your architecture firm a success. Visit graphisoft.com/us/EntreArchitect to learn more. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage. Love, learn, and go share what you know.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark R. LePage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you. and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.